Hey everyone, we're wrapping up Mental Health Awareness Month at the same time that more and more companies are working through plans for the next normal, the return to work. These return to work plans mean another set of changes for employees, adding to more uncertainty. To help us discuss what companies can do to support employees' mental health needs, I have with me today Karen Oliver-Behee. She's a friend and also founder and president of On River HR, an independent woman-owned business consulting firm that specializes in translating an organization's strategic objectives into actionable, value-creating priorities and plans. Leaning on more than 20 years in HR, executive and consulting positions, Ms. Oliver-Behee assists CEOs and executive teams in defining HR investments to strengthen business performance, accelerate value creation, and reduce costs, something I think all businesses need to do right now. Her website is onriver.com. So Karen, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
This is such an important topic. Right now, mental health is a huge topic because of COVID, issues of anxiety, depression, and burnout were already big issues in the workplace. How do you see this evolving now that companies are planning to return to work sites?
I think you're absolutely right, Kristen, that building on what was already a stressed out workforce, a tired workforce, that adding COVID and COVID going home plans and return plans only adds to that. In the last month, there's actually been a couple surveys done that have looked at this specifically, and the results are showing that over 40% of employees who have been deployed home to a work from home environment right now are already saying that by the end of their day, they're feeling exhausted, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling burnt out. In addition, we're also seeing a lot of employees where they've been furloughed or have gone through job loss, where depression and feelings of isolation are on the rise. As they're trying to search for the next employment or figure out how to manage in this new normal or this next normal. And the job search process is different than what it used to be. And that just adds to those concerns and those issues in terms of anxiety and mental health. As you then add, for the folks that are just starting to adapt to the way they're working today, that all of the companies are working on what's the next normal for the return to work plans. And that's just adding another sense of anxiety and unknowns about commuting, unknowns about what it's going to be like in the work environment, as it'll be a new set of standards and rules as they come back.
You know, I've never really struggled with mental health issues personally, but through this time, I have had a lot of anxiety. And now I'm talking to my team about returning to the work site because some people really want to. I made it optional, especially for the immediate time period. And it's so strange how much anxiety I have about, well, what if somebody gets sick and it's on me, or what if something happens? I'm not so concerned about my personal safety, but about the people around me.
Yeah.
You know, are you feeling any of that personally?
Definitely. And I think to your point, as an employee and as a business owner, there's different sets of emotions that we're all going through. And then you add to it for any of us like you and I who are working parents as well, that we have our kids and our family's safety and their health, as well as their education that we're trying to juggle and manage every day. And there are days where personally, I feel like, oh my gosh, I've been moving a million miles an hour, yet the world is standing still and I don't know what I've done. And there's other days where I feel like I've accomplished a lot in a little bit of time just by getting the homework assignments done and submitted online with our 12-year-old. And so I think it is for everybody, it's being able to be comfortable and acknowledge it's okay. It's okay to feel this way, that it is a lot to take in and a lot to work through no matter what position you're in.
Yeah. How do you think companies can best ensure that their benefits plans, this is something I know that we've gone through, just making sure that the benefits plans, our benefits plans actually can support employee mental health issues?
Yeah, I think benefit plans are something that right now for all HR professionals, it's a great time to take a look at everything that you have. Because if you think about the last 12 weeks, as HR folks, we've gone through quick adaptation to new federal, state, and local mandates that really are around the health and wellness and safety of our employees. And saying you think about FFCRA and just what it means in terms of family paid time off, which helps with mental health, right? Being able to step away and still have income while taking care of the needs of your child. And so building on that, I do think this is a great time for all HR folks to talk with their benefits brokers to understand what they have today. And not just specifically under the headline of mental health, because mental health also gets into the overall health and wellness of us, right? Of you and I. And it's about stress management and weight management and elder care options and solutions and child care options and solutions. And all of those pieces make up programs that can really help support enhancing and balancing all of our mental health as we go forward. So looking at that with your benefits broker, as well as talking with other HR professionals about what they're seeing and what kind of programs they're finding to be helpful for their teams and their staff.
Do you think more companies are going to offer support for like the child care aspect? Because it's such an unknown still right now.
Yeah, it is the one that I find the most conversations going on around how do you support a workforce that has so many working parents today and so many situations where the children are not old enough to be able to be on their own by any stretch of the imagination, and yet there aren't programs available that are safe and secure. I do think the states and the states and local municipalities are working really aggressively in helping to figure out how do you expand and provide more childcare options that are safe for folks who need to come back to the office. And I do think a lot of employers, similar to what you described, are going through that balance yourself of saying who really needs to come back and who could or would benefit more from being remote to stay and to continue to balance their childcare situation or their personal health situation or elder care as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know in our office, it's a big topic of conversation. Like, what are people going to do for the summer and even next year? Like, are we even going back to school, or are we going to have some, weird, like, rotating schedule, right?
Yeah, right. And there are some schools have already started to issue that of saying that they are looking at the potential, if not reality, of an every other day in school type of situation, which mirrors what many employers are looking at as well, to be able to provide the social distancing space that allows that balance. But then that does have significant impacts from a school schedule standpoint to what the workforce can do. Because if your child's home every other day, what does that look like? How do you manage then your schedule? And I think the piece that really makes me excited about the opportunities of how this can help us as employers really be creative is showing that in the last 12 weeks, employers have stepped up and figured out things that maybe 3 months ago seemed like distant opportunities to think about how you actually can get work done, not physically next to each other in a company office. And a lot of creative solutions have come out of that. And I think that will help us as we head into the fall, as we continue to work through some of those issues with schools. And also, again, elder care as well. That's a big challenge for a lot of families today, multi-generations in one house. Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting because on the one hand, in my office, I feel like people have been really productive, almost even an increase in productivity. And I feel a little bit bad because that's probably because there's less lead time, there's less like lag time in terms of you're at home, you're just going to keep working. But I also have heard employers say, well, the working from home arrangement has been okay, but they've seen that people are like 80% productive, that they're losing some productivity there. Have you heard any data on that?
I have. And I think one thing to keep in mind in looking at any of that data is also keeping in mind what's the work being done. So I have a client today that has a workforce where some of their work has to physically be done on site. They're a zoo. And with that, you have to take care of the animals on site. You can't do that remote. You can't phone it in. But then there's other work that when you think about merchandising or things of that nature, that also it's hard to do it remote where you're not physically with the materials. And so that's where you may see a dip in productivity, and that's an understandable dip. And for those employees, it's how do you help make them feel like they're really contributing to the company when they can't physically do the work that they would have normally done and you don't have them in the office. On the flip side, what you talked about is where you have professional services teams that now have this blend of hours, and the time that they would get up normally, they still get up, and as opposed to hopping in their car or hopping on a train, they sit down at the computer and start working. And that does increase productivity, but it also gets to that balance piece around burnout and having them feel like they're exhausted by the end of the day. Because even though maybe they did step away 2 or 3 times during the day, many of us, that's stepping away to go focus on a different priority of our children or our spouses or our significant others or our pets. And that just adds to the burden. So I do think that's where, as employers, we all have that extra accountability to remind our teams that this is unusual times and we will be going into another phase of normalcy, of the next normal, and then probably another phase.
This is interesting because, before COVID, I know I told employers, you probably told clients this too, that we should really try and avoid this mental health conversation. And now basically what you're saying, and what I've been catching myself saying a lot of times, is that we need to have this conversation, that we're not going to have a sustainable workforce if we don't have the conversation. How do you think employers can have the conversation, though, without really becoming either too parental or becoming or exposing themselves to too much liability?
Absolutely. So, I mean, to your point, it's not that long ago that I remember doing training of new managers of saying at the first sign of feeling like the time and attendance issue may have more going on to it than just not being able to wake up on time, give them the EAP number and step away. And those days are gone. That is not the way to do it. But to your point as well, we don't want our managers or our coworkers to fill in as the case manager or the psychologist for our teams either. So I do think it's really important for employers and leaders to lean in, and back to that point about benefits plans and benefits partners, talk with your health and welfare advisors to see if there's program offerings they have to train your managers in how to have that meaningful conversation with the employee to get them the help that they need. So not to become the help, but to get them to where they can have that help. And again, that can be around a variety of issues like we've been talking about that all affect mental health as well as their productivity at work.
I'm so grateful for this conversation because literally just a week ago, one of my clients was saying, hey, I feel like we're kind of crossing the line. Like we're having so many of the mental health conversations that, are we becoming the therapist instead of, and like, is it okay to say, go get a therapist? And I said, well, I think it's better to just refer them to the EAP program. And then, but I like the idea of actually contacting your benefits provider and seeing if they could have somebody come in and do a training on this, because it is, it's sensitive. You want to be empathetic to what people have going on, but at the same time, if someone becomes too reliant on your support, have we altered the nature of the relationship?
Right. And to your point, you don't want the leader, you don't want your manager to be the moonlighting psychologist, right? It's not, that you've hung out the sign and, it's like Snoopy and Lucy's in, the doctor's in, right? Because then it does become more challenging if the person isn't improving, if the situation isn't getting better, it becomes much more of a workplace challenge for the employee, for the employer. And that's what you do want to avoid, which is why back in the day, it was just give them the number and walk away. I do think, again, those days are gone, but lean on your health and welfare benefits provider if you have an EAP. Not everybody does. Some people, through their life insurance policies that they offer or their health policies, may have EAP access, but it may not be a standalone EAP. So again, that gets back to our dialogue about looking at what you have and understanding where to best align for those benefits and support.
What do you think about bringing in like a wellness coach and having a lunch and learn or anything like that?
Yeah, I think these are the times where health and wellness are so important, and having those conversations at work. And again, back to think about your employee base, right? So depending on the type of employees that you have and where they normally work, a lunch and learn could be a great way of doing it. You could also do at the beginning of shift, do a 15-minute kind of wellness check before everybody goes out on the floor. You could also do where it's a virtual piece where you can participate using technology. A lot of EAPs today, as well as health coaches, have technology where you can almost do challenges with each other, which helps engage people and get kind of that team camaraderie as well, while also getting it to where maybe it is about taking how many steps a day or different stretching or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because we had from my office like a workout challenge last year, and it was really successful. But now it seems like a much bigger hurdle to do that, to say to everybody, let's have a workout challenge, when it probably is even more important now. Right?
It is. And I think even to that point, what a lot of the data is showing right now is because everybody's kind of hunkered down, right? I mean, even I joke about with my family that, you know, it's COVID-19 is the virus, but I feel like I've gained the COVID-10, you know, where it's when we're sitting.
At least you haven't gained the COVID-19. You know?
I can set a goal, right? But it is where I think, to your point, what used to be the workout challenge today may be about reminding each other to take a stretch break, stand up, move around. If you have a sit stand workstation, you know, switch around from sitting to standing and create some variety there for your body, because your body's used to moving around. And having some of those things as challenges, although they seem small, in today's world, they can be really meaningful and really valuable. I think the other piece that it gets into is also just asking your employees what would be helpful. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a dialogue about this, and being able to really ask and hear from them of what makes sense to them. And again, that gets back to the unique pieces of your culture and your workforce will really influence what the right answers are around what the right solution can be.
Isn't it funny that the obvious solution of just asking people what they need seems so revolutionary, you know?
Well, I think to your point, though, this is a time when, especially anytime you go through change, and as you know, and I mean, my company is built on the premise of helping companies go through all sorts of change, positive change, challenging change. Change is hard, and in times of change is when leaders want to have the answer, not ask for the answer. And the reality is the best way to navigate any change, again, be it a growth change or some sort of, like in this case, a health challenge for the community. Any of these changes, the more you're open and ask for input, don't make promises, but ask for input at least, and then be able to acknowledge that they've been heard, the more successful you are in the end. And I think that's where our natural tendency as leaders is to go in and say, nope, I've got the answer, I'll let you know. And even, you know, I was talking with a colleague of mine who's an executive with a company, a mid-market company, and they were saying that basically their employees started to write in on the email box of saying, stop telling us you're going to know more in 2 weeks. They're like, the messages, although you think it's comforting, it's actually not. So it's like, wow, it's not right. Yet here they thought as leaders, they were doing the right thing because they were telling what they knew and telling when they thought they knew more. And again, if you just ask or make a mechanism available for people to be able to submit information to you or their points of view, I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of scary when your leaders are saying constantly, well, this is going to change in 2 weeks. This is going to change in 2 weeks. Instead of just saying, well, this is what we're going to do. And if things do change, we'll evolve with that. Right.
Right. And I think there's even, there's a couple groups I'm working with that they really are shifting the language to say it's about the next normal, as we're going to go through a lot of phases to get to wherever we calibrate. And even there, I think the dynamics, and we've seen it over the last 10 years, you know, business cycles, business dynamics are changing much more rapidly than they have in the past. And this has only accelerated that.
Yeah, this is just an acceleration. Have you seen companies either publicly or personally doing this well, dealing with the mental health issues successfully?
Yeah, I have. And I do think the ones that do it well, there's really 3 key pieces that they focus on, especially when it comes to that mental health element of it. And the first one, which is so important, is making it okay to feel what you feel. And that, again, knowing those feelings may vary by employee group. Depending on your company, it does mean some very thoughtful both messaging as well as support offerings, because if you have professional services as well as an assembly line, they may have different needs and they may have different concerns. So making sure you're not trying to brush it all with one stroke, but instead acknowledging wherever they may be and whatever they are. The second one is really making it an open dialogue as well. We talked about just a moment ago, asking people, get input, get feedback, understand where they are and what they think would be helpful. If you have options on ways of doing things, ask which one people think might be more beneficial for them or more helpful or supportive to them. And with that, wherever possible, try to go with the path of allowing anonymity for them to be more open, but knowing confidentiality cannot be promised in any of this, but at least making it where it could be more anonymous in terms of what they share, as it is sensitive topic area. And thirdly, it's making the resources available, having it be out and about. If you have a portal that everybody logs into every day, having a link there. If it's sending out in the emails, having links to materials. Leveraging technology wherever you can, but also knowing for those on-site folks who are essential workers who are in every day right now, are there ways you can meet with them in a safe environment and share information or point them to resources? If they're working with a physical time clock, have information available there where they see it every day and it's reinforced of both what programs you have as well as how you access them.
What do you think about EAP programs? Not every business has an EAP program. Do you think that they're even prepared to deal with COVID issues?
Yeah, so I think EAP programs vary so much. And in today's world, they vary even more. Again, I think about my 20 years in HR and what an EAP was and what an EAP is so different in variety, shape, size, price, everything. The basic structure of an EAP program, if you have a formal one, is either you have one that your management as a company promotes, and that's where a lot of the larger employers would have that, where it is something that's your own staff, you hire psychologists, you hire social workers, and they work with you. You find that a lot in larger manufacturers or places where you have large workforces in one location, especially where time and attendance is of critical importance to productivity and being able to support and manage people. Separate from that, for more of the professional services and other companies, there's kind of two brands, I'd say, or types of EAPs that many companies have. One would be just a contract where you pay based on number of employees that are in it, and the services are offered as much as needed. And I think in today's environment, that is one of the most beneficial partners you can have as an employer, is one who's not looking at each and every phone call that's made or each and every email that's answered, but instead looking at the outcome with you, of saying what's the need and how are we achieving the outcome that you're trying to get to. And if that's 5 sessions, it's 5 sessions. If it's 2, it's 2. You can also, though, do a fee for service, which is where for each time that you use the EAP or your employees use the EAP, there's a fee associated based on the different services. It's at a different level. And that, for some who don't have an EAP, may be an easier way to walk into that environment to get started, to see what's going on. The other piece, too, to keep in mind for small companies that have probably 50 or less people, is the ability in talking with your EAP vendors and your benefit brokers to be part of a consortium. And so that way you can share the cost and share the risk associated with it, which is a little bit easier. I do think to your question about, what are they, how do they work, and are they good? I do think that they offer a lot of benefit in this time, but I also I would be remiss in not reminding all of us that, as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of our health products that we offer through health benefits may include EAP elements or components without it being a standalone EAP. So don't just assume because you don't have something labeled EAP that those services aren't part of something you're paying for.
So ask your provider. Do you think employees trust the EAP that's offered by an employer?
I think that gets back to how it's been messaged and how it's been communicated. And I think that's where really great EAP partners can help you in that messaging. And it's also how your managers use it. And again, that's where training of the managers is such an important piece. If the employees feel like it's being used in a punitive way, if everybody who has a time and attendance issue gets told to call the EAP, that's how it's going to feel. And I think that's, again, where the employer and the management team really have the opportunity to be influential in how it's seen.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time, but this is such an important discussion, and I'm constantly, thinking about this right now. I think all business owners are. I'm sure you're hearing it a lot too. I'm going to include, you provided me with a bunch of references, and we will include it on YouTube so that the audience can actually access these resources. Okay.
Great. Wonderful.
And we'll also link to your website. Okay.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was fantastic.
Oh, you're fantastic. I really I learned a lot personally, and I'm going to share it as well. So I appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.